So I'm pretty much done with the Ring City DLC for Dark Souls 3. I haven't done everything there is to do in the DLC yet because I fear the emptiness that will come as a result of me finishing everything there is to do, but I still want to talk about it and give you my opinion on it. Now I'm gonna spoil pretty much everything there is to spoil about this DLC, so if you don't want to have it spoiled, you should leave now. So to access the Ring City DLC, you have to go to one of two bonfires. You can find the first bonfire in the chapel where you fight Sister Frida in the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, but there is another bonfire at the Kiln of the First Flame for people who do not own the Ashes of Ariandel. This is a really boring way to start off a DLC, but I guess it's better than the crazy convoluted stuff you had to do in Dark Souls 1 to access the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. And let's start it off sensibly with the first area. Now, this is actually my second run-through because I forgot to record this first part on my original playthrough. And I must say, running through here as a pure strength build with Fugs is far easier than the crazy sorcerer/pyromancer hybrid I was using before. Now, this is in my opinion the worst area of the entire DLC, and it's a terrible way to start it off. First of all, even though I like the idea of you descending from a very high place, I don't like how linear it all turned out. The entire area is essentially one path with 3 very short branches. That's about it. And the gimmick here is that you find messages left by Gael that let you know that you can jump down into a pile of ash so you don't take fall damage. You also encounter your first group of small enemies, which are not a big deal, but you also encounter your first big enemy, and the game immediately lets you know that you should be hitting these dudes with plunging attacks as much as you can. And this is indeed a very good idea because they're incredibly weak to plunging attacks, which is good because they do a lot of damage, they have a lot of health, they will gain hyper armor during a lot of their attacks, and their wind-up times are so long that if you start dodging as soon as they start the wind-up, you will manage to dodge 4 times before you get hit for half your health. After you deal with the first big dude, you will obviously try to pick up this item right here, but as soon as you step on the ledge, it will crumble and you will fall through a window into the next part. You will have to fight your way through a couple of the smaller enemies, and then you will encounter your first angel. And with all due respect, Mr. Miyazaki, you can take the angels and shove them up your rectum. If you don't pay close attention when the angel first appears, you may miss this beam right here. This beam of light is very important because it's the only way to get rid of this asshole of an angel. And if you miss that, so you don't know how to get rid of these angels like I did on my first playthrough, you're gonna have a lot of fun in the next area. The beam of light, by the way, is this thing growing out of the back of one of the pilgrims. If you kill it, the angel is gone forever, making the entire area much more pleasant. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. After the first encounter with the angel, we'll find a chapel with 2 knights. One of them has a banner and a tower shield, and the other one has a longsword and a kite shield. They're not that big of a deal to deal with, but the quick moveset of the longsword combined with the ginormous reach of the banner can be somewhat annoying. But, you know, Fugs. Once you go through the chapel and you turn right, you will find one of the branches. This is a fairly short area with constantly respawning enemies. There may be something that stops them from constantly respawning over and over and over again, but I never managed to figure it out, so I just cleaved them down, picked up all the items, and moved on. If you try to go the other way, which would be left once you exit the chapel, a small tower will fall down, which will break one of the walls in the chapel. And if we count the first encounter with the big dude as the first branch, then this would be the third and final branch in this starting area. Here you will encounter the second NPC of the DLC, you will find some smaller dudes, one bigger dude, you will get rid of the angel, and then you will jump down to the ruins of the Earthen Peak. Here you will immediately encounter another angel, and this is an escalation of the previous angel encounter. Instead of dealing with the angel in short bursts, basically just running from one area to another, you have to run through an entire area, taking cover in broken buildings, and the game also doesn't show you the beam of light, so you have no idea where the pilgrim is. And this is why, if you've missed the pilgrim in the previous area, you're gonna have a lot of fun here, because these angels, as I've said already, are complete and utter arseholes. Also, for some very bizarre reason, the game scattered a couple of these little thralls around the area, which the angels will target as well. However, the thralls will attack you on sight. I mean, what are you doing, little man? There is a crazy angel in the sky killing all of us. Why are you attacking me? But anyway, once you make it past the first asshole, you will get into another area that is another one. But this is once again an escalation of the previous encounter. So instead of the angel just pelting you with endless amounts of projectiles, he will also curse you if you stand still for too long, killing you instantly. You also have to make your way through a swamp that will poison you, and it ends with a pyromancer that does way too much damage for the pyromancy she's using. I wasn't kidding when I said the start to the DLC was not the best. And this area will ultimately lead you to the first boss, the Demon Prince, which is a really good boss if you're not playing a character that relies on the lock-on mechanic, because oh my goodness, phase 1 with lock-on is terrible. On my first time through, I was playing a Pyromancer here, which relied on Black Flame to deal the majority of its damage. And unfortunately, if you're not locked on with Black Flame on this boss, 90% of the time you will just miss. So I had to do phase 1 with the lock-on, which made it far less enjoyable than it was with my strength character, because both of the bosses can fill an entire screen on their own, and if you're locked on, you can't reasonably keep track on both of them at the same time. I also summoned the NPC Phantom for my second kill of this boss on my strength character, and this made phase 1 much easier because he would essentially tank one of the bosses for the entire phase. However, in my opinion, it made phase 2 much harder because the boss would randomly swap in between us, and it made the entire second phase far more hectic because as he would swap in between us, he would just hit random parts of the arena with different attacks. Though I did both kills with the Fire Demon, not the Chaos Demon, so that one may be different. So overall, a very good boss. Once you kill the Demon Prince, you will raise a banner and you will get Anor Londo down to the Ringed City by a couple of the lesser demons. Now you may be a little bit sad that you finally made it past the asshole angels, but worry not. The next section we have to go through before we can officially make it to the Ringed City is almost as good. This time around though, instead of dealing with an asshole angel, you're dealing with an asshole giant that summons a buttload of archers that do way too much damage. This wasn't as bad as the angels, especially my second time through since I knew what to do, but I still died plenty my first time around. And yes, the place where you have to drop down to eventually make your way to the giant so you can kill him so you can respawn once you rest at a bonfire is marked with the developer message, but the first time I saw that message I just assumed it was another try jumping message that would get me killed. So I just kept slamming my head into the spectral archers until I got too close, at which point I've realized that if you do get too close without taking the drop, he will just summon a flipping dragon head and burn you to death. Now up until this point I wasn't enjoying the DLC too much. I thought the boss was really good, but the surrounding areas were just full of gimmicky gauntlets. But the thing is, once you make it past the asshole angel gauntlets and then the asshole giant summoner gauntlet, the DLC is fantastic. You make your way downtown to the Ringed City, you will get ambushed by some of the smaller dudes, and then you will find another bonfire. At this point, you have to be careful even when fighting the smaller dudes, because some of them will have an aura that will slowly curse you, though luckily these are very easy to recognize because they have crazy spikes growing out of them. Once you kill a couple of the smaller dudes, you will encounter your first Ringed Knight, and the best way to describe these is, well, they're kind of like the Black Knights from Dark Souls 1. They are very intimidating when you first see them, and they are very dangerous as long as you're terrified of them, because if you keep your distance, they are deadly, but once you get close to them, you can easily circle strafe them and backstab them. You may also be able to parry them, but since I'm generally terrible at parries, I didn't even try, to be honest. Now, right after the first Ringed Knight, you will also encounter the first, what the community decided to call Beyblade Priest, which is a lovely name, is it not? And these dudes are just like the Ringed Knights. They're only difficult as long as you hesitate to run up to them and smash them in the face, because that's their weakness. You smash them in the face and they die. If you don't do that, they will keep putting circles under your feet, which constantly do damage. They will heal and hide in their shells, so just run up to them and smash them in the face, preferably with something very, very big. Once you kill the Beyblade Priest, you will encounter your first Ringed Knight with a spear. This dude is pretty scary. He has fast attacks, long range, and a really big shield. On top of that, there is another Beyblade Priest hidden somewhere in the room, and he's gonna keep spamming the circles underneath your feet. Now, you may be tempted to run past this into the next area, but I would not recommend it, because the next area is designed in a way where if you rush forward, you will pull the entire world and the world's mum. Now, once you make your way down to the bottom of the ringed city, you will find a ginormous lake that's full of, well, things. I don't really know how to describe them, and I don't even know if I want to. There are these really fat fly people that, for whatever reason, squirt white stuff out of their arse when you get behind them. Though luckily, their attacks are well telegraphed, and you can also stagger them with each hit. Now, the lake itself is pretty big and can feel somewhat bland if you're just running through the middle. However, if you go on the outside of the lake, there's plenty of stuff to be found. On the far side of lake, for example, is a little surprise in the form of a recycled boss, though he very politely drops all of his gear, which is the stuff I was using for the second playthrough. There is also a pack of ringed knights that you pretty much have to fight together, which is a terrifying experience, especially for a sorcerer. But once again, I would not recommend just running away from them, trying to split them up and kite them, because the more you kite them, the more you pull, and oh god! There's also another one of the giant summoners in the middle of the lake, but this one is far easier to deal with, because you can run up to him so he stops spawning the archers, and you only have to deal with the sorcerers and the melee dudes, which are much easier to deal with. Now, once you clear out the entire lake and you kill the ringed knights, you will make your way onto a bridge and you may or may not get killed by a dragon. Lovely. They also put another ringed knight underneath the bridge on a narrow walkway, so he isn't as easy to backstab as the other ones, and judging by the amount of bloodstains that were there, it worked. And I almost forgot to mention that before you go onto the dragon bridge, you will find a shortcut leading to the previous bonfire, which is pretty good. Now, the way you make your way across the bridge is alright because there are items that mark openings in the wall, though this enemy that's placed right next to the first item, which pushes you onto the bridge so you get hit by a dragon, is just a dick move. Once you make it to the other side of the dragon gauntlet, you will enter the shared crypt. I personally found this area fairly boring because you're just going round and round on stairs with an occasional room with like 1 or 2 enemies. Though at least there is an invader there, so it does get spiced up a wee little bit. Now, before we move on to the next area, I just want to say that the previous 3 areas took me about 4-ish hours to explore altogether. And I'm pretty sure I've missed some stuff in there. The reason why I'm skipping over them is because each area has a theme and builds around it. The city streets, for example, have a bunch of smaller areas that you can explore and get items in, and they're mostly populated by the ringed knights, the big fat dudes that have a humanity for a head, and the Beyblade priests and the smaller dudes that may or may not curse you. But that's about it for that area, which is fine, but since I'm trying to get through this video in a timely manner, I don't think it's important to show you every ringed knight you fight. Also, the amount of time you spend in each area may be wildly different. I personally like to take things slow and explore everything I can. Now, once you make it up enough stairs in the shared crypt, you will find another bonfire. Right after the bonfire is a narrow ledge leading onto a bridge where you will encounter the dragon. Now, if you want to fight the dragon later on as a full-on boss, which I have not done yet, you have to defeat him on this bridge. And this fight is well, an upper half of a dragon on a bridge in a Dark Souls game. So you run in when he's not doing an attack, so you stab him a little bit, and you run away when he is doing an attack, so you don't get hit. Once you stab him enough times, he will lower his head, you will do a visceral attack, and he will fall into a hole. That's it. Once you deal with the dragon, you will find a building that has an illusionary wall with a Beyblade priest, another illusionary wall, and a final illusionary wall that has a pretty cool miracle in it, and you will find an elevator that leads to the previous Ringed City bonfire. Now, as much as I like shortcuts, I don't like shortcuts that contain elevators, because every time you die to the next mob, which is a ginormous ringed knight with 2 swords, right after which you fight a boss, you respawn at the bonfire, then you have to go down the elevator, which you've hopefully sent up, because if not, you will have to pull the lever, wait for the elevator to come back up, then ride it down, run around the ringed knight, and then enter the boss arena again. And if that was enough, the boss also has some dialogue that he has to exhaust before you can actually fight. And the boss is also kind of shit, because it's a gank. You don't even get a bloody soul when you kill it, just like, here, have a slab, mate. Now, if I understand this correctly, there's a covenant that you can enter right before this room, and if you're in that covenant, you can be summoned as this boss. So if you like PvP, it's probably really cool. For me, though, it was kind of ass. Now, once you kill the boss, you'll get another bonfire. And we're almost done with the DLC. We will ride an elevator, touch an egg that we probably shouldn't have touched, which kind of breaks everything. I don't really know what happened. Ask Vati. We end up at the end of the bloody world where everything is ash. We're gonna fight a crazy cleric bitch, and all that's left to do is fight Gael, which is one of the best bosses in this entire series. This is, in my opinion, what a boss in Dark Souls should be like. They shouldn't have incredibly fast attacks or gap closers that do way too much damage. They shouldn't have 5 different attacks that have the same tail but different swing times. They shouldn't have combos that last for 12 swings, so the best strategy is to just run away from them. I'm looking at you, Black Flame Frida. Even though Gael isn't easy, he has very clear tells, so as soon as he starts doing something, you know what he's gonna do. And if you react accordingly, you don't get hit, which creates an opening and you can deal damage. But at the same time, if you get cocky or you misread one of his tells, you get punished. That's how a boss should be. Though I still need to make my way over there with my strength setup because I feel like doing this as a pyromancer made the second and third phase easier than they should have been. And that's it. You're done. If you have the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, you can take the Dark Soul of Man and bring it to the painter, who will paint a world in your name. So get ready, bitches, for Dark Souls 4, the painted world of Hellmans. I hear the place is dark, cold, but also gentle. Now, even though the DLC started off a little bit weak in my opinion, I've enjoyed it quite a bit. Though it still feels like this all should have been in the base game because even with the DLC, the game still feels a little bit too short. But all in all, the Ring City DLC added about 8-ish more hours of playtime, and I'm still going through it again, so it's gonna be more like 12 to 13. So I'm kind of happy with it. It's definitely better than the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, which was over after about 3.5 hours. I didn't really talk about the new items you find in the DLC, like the shield doors and stuff like that, but that's mostly because I haven't tried them out properly yet. Now, this is the first time I made I think I'm going to call it a talk-through of a game or a DLC. It was a lot of fun to make, but I would like to know what you guys think about it. Did you enjoy the video? Was it too long? Maybe too short? Let me know in the comment section. I'm done for today. I've been rambling for 17 minutes, so I thank you very much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.